When I was in Iraq, we literally were mortared every single day.
This guy's panting, he's out of breath, and he says, someone just shot themselves.
You're making split-second decisions, life and death, and it's quick.
Reacclimating to civilian life after being subjected to that kind of intensity is incredibly tough.
I've changed, and I'm not the same person that I was when I left.
You know, we were in some pretty serious situations, so those are kind of things you don't forget.
And you can't expect people to not die. That's just what it is. It's a serious thing.
That's war. It just comes with it.
So I first thought about joining the military, probably would have been 2010. I had just graduated and got my EMT certificate and was trying to find work and was having a hard time.
My grandfather and my father were both in the Navy. I went into the Navy and, like I said, 14 years later, got out.
To join, I was 19 years old. I tried to join the Marine Corps, but I had medical issues. They told me that I was too much of a risk. I met an Army recruiter, and I left on my birthday.
I saw a guy walking into the high school wearing a Marine Corps uniform. I saw the Air Force and the Army. Marine Corps uniform looked way better.
I just felt like I had to do my part. I wanted to make something of myself and make a difference.
9/11 was my senior year in high school. I'm going to fight for my country because somebody reached out and hurt a lot of Americans.
I was raised by my grandparents, so I just knew that there wasn't going to be money for college and things like that. So I just decided to take it on my own self, to take care of myself, to get out the door.
When you get ready to deploy and you're carrying all your gear that you're going to need for at least 6 months, before you even get to the airport, you're already in the mindset.
You know, once I stepped off the bus, there was no time to be scared or to be concerned.
When we landed, I felt completely comfortable. My platoon sergeant, he said, "I'll take care of you," and I just put 100% trust in him.
Deployment is the culmination of everything you train to do in the military.
When you're deployed, forward deployed, in a war zone, it's a whole different ballgame. It's game time. You're making split-second decisions, life and death, and it's quick.
The first 2 months of my deployment, we were awake for like 32 hours a day. Quick reaction force, for if anything happened, we were the ones to go call.
We worked, sun up, sun down.
You don't ever really come down because you never know when something's going to happen. So you're always on edge.
You know, you have several hundreds of people running around. You have jets running continuously 24 hours a day. You're flying for hours on end in a wetsuit with all your gear on, just in case someone falls over or just in case a jet goes in the water.
There is no relaxation time, really. The time you're given to relax, it seems like that's when something happens.
You know that you have to depend on everybody there when you deploy to save you, and they're depending on you to save them.
We ate together, we slept together, we suffered together, we partied together. Just as hard as we trained, we partied. Sometimes we knew more about each other than our own families did.
You're there with them every day. It's like if you hang out with a friend for a certain amount of time, like here in the civilian world, you hang out with somebody for a week, it feels like you get really tired of them eventually. But in the Marine Corps, I don't know, you guys are going through the same things. You know that this person has the same feelings about this as you. They got up at 5 this morning. They ate the same shit as you. They deal with the same people yelling at them as you.
You know, my military buddies, I could talk to them about anything or just be 100% vulnerable. Versus my family, I still don't feel that way today. My brothers and sisters, I'd die for them today.
They were the guys who essentially were going to have my back. We were in some pretty serious situations, so those are kind of things you don't forget.
During my training, I don't think it ever really hit me that I was training to kill another person.
In the back of my mind, I knew that I was going on to further medical training, and so I'd be helping people and saving people instead of actually killing people.
In the Marine Corps, there's no confusion about it. It's immediate. If you don't know that when you sign up, like you're living a fairy tale.
About 3 days into the Army, I realized that I was being trained to kill, and it made me nervous, but I was actually kind of excited about it.
My primary job was an aviation warfare systems operator. I was also a trained door gunner, so I knew that moment could come at any time.
You are taught to kill and you're taught to hurt people, but I want to make sure I come home, not them.
But I believed in what we were doing, so that's war. It just comes with it.
And you can't expect people to not die. That's just what it is. It's a serious thing.
I couldn't sleep at all for like the first 2 days I got back.
When you get back home and you get off the bus and everybody's there waiting for you, cheering with signs and stuff, it makes you feel like you really did the right thing.
I was just real nervous about, how it would go, if people would think that I was too intense.
When I got out of the service, I was nervous about how people would accept me. I've changed. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I was nervous just about having a different routine.
After not seeing your parents for 9 months, like that's kind of a shock to see them and how much they had changed and how much like you've changed not only as kind of a person, but like how you carry yourself is different when you come back.
The main thing I was nervous about was people, just like my family, understanding that I've changed and I'm not the same person that I was when I left, and that I still love them. It's just a lot harder for me to show.
There's such an unknown when you're out. When you're in the military, you have a schedule. Every day is different, but you basically know what to expect. You know that you have employment, insurance. When you're out, you have to find your way.
Reacclimating to civilian life after being subjected to that kind of intensity is incredibly tough. You can't really find anything else to get you to that level that it's almost a high.
Some people are so damaged by what they experience that they might not be able to work. The civilian world doesn't accommodate a lot of the needs of military. I've had 2 jobs in town here that I had to leave because I ran out of leave because of medical appointments.
In the civilian world, people don't necessarily strive for the same goal. The military, you perform as a unit or you fail. Civilian, there's too many people trying to be individuals and they step on everybody along the way.
My home life when I was married was really difficult. We had a very volatile relationship basically the whole time we were together. constantly bickering and verbal and emotional abuse. And when you deploy, you don't have that. Everybody gets along, and I felt more connected than I was when I was home with my husband or with my parents.
It took me 5 years to work through it, seeing psychiatrists and psychologists and medications and learning treatments and family working with me. That was the one thing I had. I had a good family background to help me through it.
We went to Outback Steakhouse and we were eating, and just like everything got really overwhelming, like all the chatter of things on plates and people talking and just a million different conversations. It just got overwhelming, and I had to like get up and leave. When we're in a platoon, that would be the most people you would be around, more than likely, like 20 to 30 people. So to be in a restaurant of strangers and they're all just chattering and just tons of different noises, it was weird.
There's other things that we have to deal with, like insomnia, nightmares.
I've been in therapy since I got out, and it's still very hard to adjust to things. Feel a lot of anxiety, and then some days it's a lot better. So it's every day just trying to fight the fight.
Because you're still on guard. You're still looking at things, still trying to figure out, who could possibly hurt you in a room. And then you try to establish what you could do in that situation in case it does happen. I would say that being on guard that's part of the PTSD as well, but I'm always on guard. I'm always watching and making threat assessments.
Another issue I had when I first came back was driving. In Iraq, they used garbage, dead animals on the side of the road, potholes that may have already been where they exploded an IED. They fill it back up with IEDs and, blow it up again. When I first moved back, when I would pass a trash bag on the side of the road, I used to have panic attacks. Just little things like that.
I would characterize my return to civilian life very positively. I'd spent a good portion of my last couple of years in the Army mentally preparing to return to civilian life. I was ready to come back. I was much more nervous financially because I just left like a really comfy, well-paying job to being uncertain about having a paycheck and how I was going to pay for food and a roof over my head.
We can't talk about what's bothering us. A lot of times we don't know why we're upset.
It can be something as small as two kids talking in class behind me, as the professor's giving his lecture, and being a senior non-commissioned officer, my first reaction is to turn around and say, which one of you wants to get slapped first? It's like nothing is important. I have to bite my tongue a lot, and I have to get up sometimes and go use the restroom and wash my hands and regather my thoughts and come back.
In my mind, I think that, I have family and friends around me that don't understand a lot what's going on. So I try to be strong for them and positive and not fall apart in front of them. But most of the time I'm very nervous about what's going to happen to my friends and their families.
When someone says, oh, this is so hard, and they're doing something pretty easy. And I said, try doing it while someone's shooting at you.
Just because you don't see them in a wheelchair, just because you don't see them physically hurt, doesn't mean they don't have wounds. I have 3 herniated discs, constant nerve pain, a lot of physical problems that people won't even necessarily recognize if they see me walking across the parking lot. I have underlying physical problems, and my wife tells me that I have underlying psychological problems too. I think people disregard that way too often. It took us 40, 50 years to even acknowledge that PTSD was a thing for Vietnam veterans. They went through unimaginable horrors, and it took us this long to even acknowledge it.
I like to put my backpack together the same way every day. It's almost habit. I just reach in there, I know exactly where everything is. It always makes me laugh when I look over and, see a freshman in college, who just happens to be in that class or whatever, and he's fumbling through his backpack and his pencils, and I say to myself, why doesn't he put this stuff in the same pockets all the time?
Most people don't understand a veteran. A veteran understands a veteran. Marines understand Marines. They know what they've been through. They've chewed the same dirt.
You can't really expect them to come home and, necessarily be that dad or that mom or that daughter or brother that they were. And I think people need to give people time to integrate themselves back into the civilian world.
Everyone's experience overseas is different.
Not all of us are, gonna snap and shoot someplace up.
Some people come back and they have a hard time coping just day to day. And other people, they come back and there's no issues at all. They can continue on with their lives.
We did a lot of crazy things. We did a lot of things that would be considered offensive.
You can share anything with other soldiers, and they get it. They've been there. They know what you're going through. Sharing it with a family member, it doesn't carry as much weight because they may listen. They may want to be there for you, but they've never experienced it.
Try not to ask too many questions. The more questions you ask about a deployment or something of that nature, you may not like the answers you'll get.
A veteran, excuse my French, he's not going to bullshit you. He's going to tell you the way it is. And if you don't like his answer, well, maybe you should rephrase the question.
Survivor guilt is huge. Military sexual trauma. That's not reported like it should be. A lot of times, the women get treated so terribly. The victim of the sexual trauma is the one that's put on trial.
I think people need to realize that veterans returning have scars, have wounds, and they need a lot more help than what is out there.
Veterans might get moody, not talk to anybody. A lot of civilians, they don't know how to react to the way that the veteran is dealing or avoiding, what's going on. And it isn't because we're trying to be difficult. It's just some of us don't know how to cope.
My return to civilian life was kind of in between. Since going to college and doing all the things I'm doing, I'm hoping to make a positive difference in a lot of people's lives.
Now that I'm further removed from my service, I obviously have taken some time and looked at what the military is essentially. You're essentially like a iron fist for a man in a suit somewhere.
When I think about fallen comrades, I think about they went over there thinking they were coming home. And I think about as they lay there dying, like What were their kids doing? What was their wife doing? Who's going to tell them? What are they going to say?
Some people are going to buy you a beer and some people are going to shake your hand, but I don't think any of them really understand it all the way unless they've done it themselves.
Our country's great for a reason. And you know, when you're in that class and you're reading that Constitution and the Bill of Rights and all this stuff, you see it as just ink on a piece of paper, you know? But it was written in blood. They went over there so you could go out there in the street and hold up that picket sign, you know, or argue about what bathroom you wanted to use. The only reason you can do that is because they went there and gave their life.